Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your host, T-shirted historian, and here we are with another Dungeons and Discussions. Usually, my partner Grim would be joining me for this one, but he has got his own thing going on tonight, and honestly, I'd almost rather be joining him, but I'm here with the creator of Aeres, which is the Chronicles of Aeres, which is a really cool 5e setting with some great fresh new races, some really wonderful artwork, and a really good book. And I highly recommend it. But I figure if you've got some questions, maybe we should talk to the man himself. So here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick caveat to all of you OSR guys watching right now: don't turn off the video just because he said 5e, because I promise you that the Chronicles of Aeres has something that you can enjoy and take away from. We've got a lot of OSR flavor and traditionalism to our work.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. And just as a disclaimer, I had to purchase my own copy of the book, hardback. I did not get a free copy or anything like that. You know, Greg didn't come on there and, hey, can you put this on your show? I asked him to come on the show because I wanted to talk about his book, because I think it's really cool. I think it's a nice breath of fresh air, especially considering what you can get from Wizards of the Coast these days. And it needs to be known about. Also, I'm really happy that you put Ratkin in, because that pisses me off that WotC hasn't done that yet.
No, they haven't done it, and they're probably never going to do it, because the only reason for them to ever do it would be to compete with Pathfinder 2nd edition. And for some reason, I feel like they're not trying to compete with them right now. I don't know why. Maybe they'll be left in the dust. Who knows? Yeah,
I can speak volumes on why Pathfinder 2nd edition is not doing well. One of the main reasons is because most of us who got into Pathfinder 1st edition in the first place did so because 4th edition was crap. And
it was kind of like how I don't know if you're a gamer, like a video game guy, but like Diablo 3 came out and then Path of Exile just blew it out of the water. If you guys out there who play that.
Yep. And so, of course, Pathfinder Paizo was doing great for the longest time. 5th edition came out, and Pathfinder was still doing pretty good because, most of my gaming friends were like, well, you know what? We're already pretty well invested in this. Let's not switch over just yet. Then they released Pathfinder 2, which was completely not compatible with Pathfinder 1, and it was like, okay, bad move.
Yeah, that was a bad move. I don't know much about it, actually.
Well, it's pretty bad. I pre-ordered it, of course, and I got the, earliest edition, and the first thing I did, which is any time I get a new book, the first thing I try to do is build a character to see how difficult that is.
Right.
Because I figure, okay, if I can build a character pretty easily, then it's not too hard of a system to get a hold of and figure out how to do. Well, I tried for about 2 hours to put a character together, and I got so frustrated with trying to flip back and forth between the book to find everything you needed that eventually I just said, this is garbage. I'm not going to get any further invested beyond this. And
ouch. That's painful.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help them. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not an expert on that type of thing by any means, but we try pretty hard with Aeres. And you can pronounce it Aeres, like in Final Fantasy VII, or Ares, like the God of War, or the way we pronounce it is Aeres, which phonetically doesn't make sense if you look at the word, but still, so it doesn't really matter, I guess.
And if you hear some something like a woodchuck here in the background, that's my puppy gnawing on stuff.
Oh, okay, that's cute.
Yeah. And anyway, let me say hello to our audience here. Snortopoopus, of course, been with us. He's our great moderator. and a really cool bear. We have Bruno's Geek Reviews. How are you doing, Bruno? Yeah, the art is good. We have Fizz Chozo. This is a guy who's trying to get his own Indiegogo comic book started up. And I hope he succeeds because it looks pretty original.
That's awesome.
Franklin Mills. I have not met you yet, but yeah, the book is amazing. It is. Is this your partner?
It is. Yeah, Frank is. He helped me write a few things too, but he's a technical genius in any type of digital production that you can imagine. Cinematography. He did the entire layout of the book. He did illustrations for the book. He's done all our videos on YouTube. Like, the guy knows his stuff.
Awesome. Sorry about that. And let's see. We have LDG of Geeks Enjoy. Hey, man, it's good to see you. All right. And Snortopoopa says, so the monsters are still bad. Evil is still evil. Men were real men. Women were real women. And small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri were real small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri. I tell you what. Why don't we answer that question just by kind of giving a general overview of what Aeres is about?
Sure. So I don't want to go too deep into the background. You know, we've got a few videos about the whole history about it, but it basically started with us in high school, which was, for me, like 22 years ago, like 23 years ago. We were playing 2nd edition AD&D. So that's really where our heart lies. And that's how we started playing Dungeons and Dragons and got into tabletop role playing. And Aeres was a world that I made. You know, every DM likes to do their own world building. They like to build their own world. So I was so obsessed with Tolkien at the time and the Silmarillion that, like, in high school, I just vomited out this huge setting that was completely based on Tolkien. And I called it Aeres, and it had a lot of very Tolkien-esque things in it.
Yeah, the map looks similar in a way.
Absolutely. And that's what we played. And we had a great time. You know, I had a whole campaign that was essentially lifted from the Lord of the Rings. We had a Hobbit hero who had to find some kind of artifact to defeat a Dark Lord and go on this huge journey. And Frank was there. He played it. And, like, our players loved that for some reason. Like, so that's what it was. So, but we kind of stopped playing for a long, long time. And came back. It was actually Frank's idea to come back with 5th edition. He picked it up on the recommendation of a friend, and he was like, hey, this is kind of similar to 2nd edition, which, I mean, it is in some ways. It has the return of skill proficiencies and backgrounds, which are like kits and, you know, theater of the mind and stuff like that. So we started to get into it. Like, you know what? We should resurrect our high school campaign setting and make it into something that other players and DMs can pick up and use and enjoy. So that's what we did. You know, we took a look at what was out there, and it's like, well, there's really not a whole lot of old-fashioned 2nd edition style, like, epic heroic fantasy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can carve out a niche with what we've got here with Aeres. So I dove right into it. We actually ran a campaign. It wasn't a super long campaign, but I was the DM, and we played in Aeres for the first time during COVID lockdown, which was in 2020, like the summer. And my players loved it so much that they're like, you need to do something with it. You have to do something with this right now. Okay, so I guess I will. So that's how I started working on the book, and that's what we put together here. Is the Chronicles of Aeres. It's got a long history behind it.
That is pretty cool. I am kind of curious. You said that the setting is very heroic, high fantasy.
Sure, absolutely.
And you know, I think that is kind of refreshing considering the current direction that 5e is going with the main company. It seems to be kind of devolving away from heroic high fantasy. It seems to be trying to favor more slice of life, everyday common adventure type things. And
yeah, I mean, we consider ourselves kind of like time travelers. Imagine if we were buried in a time vault from 1998. We suddenly woke up in 2020 and we were presented with what D&D was like now. It's like, what the hell is going on here? It doesn't look like anything like how we used to play like way back in the day. I mean, we have followers and people who have been playing since the 70s. So, in the 90s, that's modern to them. But we wanted to kind of return to the heroic storybook adventure that started in high school when we were playing second edition. So we emphasize ideas like the hero's journey, chivalry, good versus evil, mythical characters and archetypes, which I guess D&D 5th edition still has to some degree. There are snippets of it here and there, but you're right, it doesn't seem like it's much of the focus anymore. I mean, D&D has always been like a social experience, but back in our day in second edition, there was always a balance between the adventure and the sociality, and usually the adventure actually won over. And I think modern D&D is kind of shifting towards the other end. So, what players are looking for now is more kind of, I guess, self-insert characters rather than heroes from like, storybook fantasy. And if you want to get to what the heart of Aeres is as a setting, it is more of a storybook style of fantasy. You can call it traditional, European, medieval fantasy or whatever, but it's a style that's old-fashioned. It's fallen out of favor. We wanted to bring it back for a 5th edition audience. And I call it, a few days ago on Twitter, I called it practical effects fantasy. And that's the kind of feeling we wanted to instill when you look at the book. It has a nostalgic feeling to it, kind of a warm feeling like you're transported back in time to where you're watching like Willow or The Dark Crystal or Ridley Scott's Legend, those classic 80s fantasy movies.
Oh, yeah. I know
it's
it.
not like the super flashy kind of like anime-inspired style that we have now. If you compare Aeres to the Legend of Vox Machina, which is super hot right now, we're actually more like the Hobbit cartoon from 1977. That's really what we're like.
I love that cartoon. And I just want to point out, too, how amazing these illustrations are. The fact that, you have a page dedicated to every god in your book just to kind of bring home more of your setting. In fact, this is something I really like about this particular book, this particular setting, is the fact that there is lore on pretty much every single page of this book to help you get further immersed into it.
That was my goal. Like, if you look at the back cover, it says, our little blurb says 1 part fantasy novel and 1 part game book. And that was kind of my philosophy going into it. I wanted everything to be totally relevant to the storybook feel of the world and the setting. We have a lot of crunch is actually in the book. We have new classes, we have new systems, but those are filled with a ton of flavor that's relevant to the overarching saga of Aeres and the setting. Nothing is shoehorned in that doesn't fit. So you're definitely right on that front.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's just like the first time I started looking through the book, a lot of people will try to, devalue the worth of good art in a book. But I promise, it's like the cover is the first thing that will pull somebody in to look at your stuff. And the internal artwork is what will keep them. And that really, just like, first off, it's like every page, there's no white pages. And I know a lot of people who listen to my channel regularly always hear, oh, t-shirts, you're always talking about how that's off-white pages. Yeah, I like off-white pages. I like gray or yellow or dark green or something like that, because looking at a white page gets painful after a while. So I think that's a nice stylistic choice. I'm guessing that was for design.
It was, and we went with a sans serif font, which normally you would have a font like Times New Roman for like a fantasy book, but we felt like for a game book, sans serif, which in this case is a font called Avenir, is a lot. I think it's a lot more readable.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, actually, everything is very clear as far as it's written. It's I like it, and it's double column, so there's lots of good chunky material here to read. So I mean, I guess this book could have easily been like twice the size if you had just stuck to single column on everything.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the artwork that you were talking about, like probably our main reason for making this book was for ourselves. Like we weren't part of the Dungeons and Dragons community like we are now. Like we have a fairly sizable following now on Twitter, but when we started working on the book, we had nothing. Nobody knew who we were at all. We were completely nobodies, had no following. We started working on the book really for ourselves because we wanted to see the setting that we built up in high school, super nostalgic for us, a major part of our lives. We wanted to see that like turn into a real thing that somebody could have on their table and like pick up and read. And so like that's why we focused so much and spent so much money on like we have to have artwork that shows everything. Like there's stuff that's left to the imagination, of course, but we really wanted to flesh it out.
It looks great. Got some comments from the audience here. Kringe von Zarovich. It's one of my panelists on Saturdays. Hey, he says, "Sup, nerds? You're a nerd too. Come on." Have the lovely Sherry. It's good to see you too. Bruno is offended at Kring. And he's saying should he use papyrus, which if you've read Varg Vikernes' book, yeah, it's all done in papyrus.
Yeah, his first version was completely in papyrus, and he's such a Luddite that's disconnected from like civilization. I don't think he realized that was retarded. Like that was just the worst decision.
Yeah, that was not a good decision. It's kind of like, yeah, Varg in the future, maybe, take some tips from other creators and stuff. If you,
right.
Decide to republish, which I really wonder about that. I know he follows TTRPGers, but I really don't know how much he updates or does anything with his stuff.
He doesn't. He's weird. He lives on a farm in France, and he has 8 kids. He has no electricity. Well, he does, but still. But anyway, like on the topic of fonts, so our 2 main fonts are the one I mentioned, but we actually had to buy the Lord of the Rings font. So there's this one guy, I think he lives in maybe Poland. I can't remember where he's at, but he made a font that's identical to the Lord of the Rings movie font. It's called the Ring Bearer. You have to pay for it, but that's what we use for all of our headers. And like if you look at our logo and all the headers in the book are in the Lord of the Rings font intentionally.
Like these?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it does look very Lord of the Ring-ish. Which I'm almost afraid to ask you what you thought of the Peter Jackson films, but
I like him. I mean, I know that old school people have reservations about how he handled some of the characters, especially in the Two Towers, but for our audiences, a film and a book have to be 2 separate things. You have to create character development and drama where there wasn't any before. I personally would have preferred it to be like identical to the book and have everyone be like an epic archetype, but I get what Peter Jackson was doing. I love the first 3 movies. The Hobbit, not so much. The Hobbit's no good.
I liked them all. I'm sorry, I just did. Just because I was just so happy to be immersed in that world, even if it was, not 100% like the books.
Yeah, right. I hear you.
But and I don't think Professor Tolkien would have been upset with it. I think he would have enjoyed it. I may have to let the puppy out here in a second because she's whining at me.
I mean,
but
compared to all the different studios that tried to approach Tolkien and make their movies, and like the ideas they had were completely ridiculous and had nothing to do with his book, I'm glad he turned them all down.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this is kind of cool. This is kind of what I'm talking about. As far as adding some lore to everything. I mean, we have rarities and demographics for critters and people. But what I like here is you have all the languages, but you also have everyone who possibly speaks it. So if there's, NPC races and stuff like hobgoblins and ogres and stuff, you'll know what they say or how they speak, etc., and have an idea. The GM can go into this going, oh, okay, so these characters may not be able to understand this, or they may understand this.
Yeah, like I have to admit, like when you dive into Aeres, like compared to Forgotten Realms, like let's just do a quick comparison. Forgotten Realms is like a 24 pack sampler case of 6 different kinds of beer.
Yeah.
You find one you like, you drink all 6 cans, and then you just take sips of the rest. But Aeres is more like a bottle of scotch. It's a more focused experience. You have to get into it. You have to learn to love it. Once you're in, you're in. So it requires a bit of effort on the part of someone who, like a DM, who's trying to build a campaign there. But you're going to find a lot of rich lore and rich history there. Like all of our languages are unique. Like none of them are, I mean, we have common, of course, but we have every race speaks a specific language that has its own tones, and like the naming conventions match the language. We have name examples for each race. That's the level of detail that we wanted to go in with Iris. So like everything has flavor.
Love that. By the way, small suggestion, and I'm only going to bring it up because it's relevant at this particular moment.
Sure.
I'm gonna go ahead and take her out and let you tell the audience more about the races, because I know you have a lot of them, and some of them are very, very special. I mean, the Wilderkind in particular, I think are going to be a hit with a lot of people.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Bookmarks. You need bookmarks.
Bookmarks.
Yeah, well, like the little silk ones that they put in a lot of the books.
Yeah, that would be great. The digital version, we of course have hyperlinks in our table of contents, which is absolutely a requirement. But it would have been awesome if we had one of those ribbons. If we do like a 2.0 version of the book, which we are working on, we're going to do an updated version at some point. I'll see if I can get those ribbons added into there. Maybe more than one.
Sweet, yeah, because old grognards like me, we like our physical copies. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let her out, and I'm going to have to unfortunately close the book because this one, it'll close on its own. But I don't want to lose my page.
Yep.
And I will be right back in a couple of seconds. You go ahead.
Yep, I'll be back in so yeah, so what we have here is in Iris, we have a ton of races, right? We have 18 different races, which seems like a lot. And it's like, wow. Well, the idea is that there are basically 2 types of categories of people in the world. There are the human-like races, which are what we call the Etherborn there. They were born from the gods, directly from the void of the space of magic and mystery. So we have humans and elves and dwarves, and they each have their own culture that's unique to Iris. We also have the Wilderkind, which are all races that were created through transformation, mystical transformation. So that's where you have like the anthropomorphic animal races, the half animal races like the rat folk and the raven folk and races like that. And that's they all kind of most of them live in like a magical forest to the north. But the thing about our races is that they're all kind of tied together. The gods of this world started out completely animal-like and bestial. And as time went on, as more gods came into the world, they became more human-like. And so that's where the differentiation of our races comes into play. And we add a ton of unique ability traits and racial feats to our races. Like, if you take a look at a book like Wildemount or Taldori, Matt Mercer stuff, he basically gives like 2 paragraphs to each race, and that's it. And maybe you throw some dark vision on there and you call it a day. That's not what you get with Iris. We have like fully fleshed out abilities and racial feats for every single race. They have a full backstory with lore, role-playing tips, how to play as them, what they represent, what they mean. And so that's what sets us apart in terms of like how the races in our world interact.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant, when I was saying it's like everything is really just, I mean, just bursting with lore to the point where, you can really jump into this setting. I almost kind of feel like there should be a book series or something about this.
Well, it started as a fantasy novel back in,
Oh yeah,
yep, in 2000, I think it was like 2008 or 9. I wanted to write a fantasy novel, and I started, and I took like 50 or 60 pages of notes, and I started working on it. I was like, you know what? I'm probably not a novelist. I mean, I guess I could be, but my writing style is so flowery that I don't know. And like our stuff is so traditional that no publisher would pick us up now. We're not we're not grim dark, first of all. So you've got in fantasy now you have young adult.
I don't know. This is Grim and Frostbite, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You've got grim dark, you've got young adult, and you've got whatever else social commentary. And we're none of those. We're like classical, like Tolkien fantasy. So I'm like, well, that's not going to work. How about I just make a D&D setting instead? And so that's what I ended up doing.
Oddly enough, and this I don't want to make this sound like I'm putting your work down or anything like that, but I honestly think this type of setting would probably appeal really well to young players, like very young. And the reason is because, I mean, just looking at the artwork and all of everything, this is kind of like, it still appeals to that high adventure, fantasy element type thing that younger folks would, I think, enjoy. I mean, certainly I used to get into that kind of stuff when I was, 10 or 11 years old myself.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned the 1977 Hobbit cartoon. That's one of our inspirations. There's nothing in this book except for maybe a couple of pieces of art that would not be remotely inappropriate for someone like in the age 10 to 12 group. My idea is I want you 40 and 50-year-old grognards who have kids to show Aeres to your kids and be like, hey, look, this is what heroic fantasy is about. And maybe you can teach them about Dungeons and Dragons and not have them play as baristas in a magical Starbucks for once.
Or everyone being a tiefling with a tragic backstory.
Right, exactly. So it's like, look, our kobolds right there.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted our kobolds to be like Jim Henson. I wanted them to be a Jim Henson Fraggle Rock version of kobolds that live in a crystal cavern and are irreproachably innocent and carefree, and they might experience tragedy, but if you play as one, you have to accept that you don't know much about the outside world. You're kind of like a sprightly fairy that is different from every other race, and that's what you represent. So it can easily appeal to a younger age group, I think.
Yeah, I love the fact that there are so many unique races in this. I mean, okay, if you're a player and you just want to add some more races to your tool belt and some more classes to try out in 5e, this is a good book for that. Or, if you're a GM, it's a great book for getting into a whole new setting and a whole new campaign style. I think it's got something for everybody, which is what I like in when I pick up books. And I've got some comments from the audience. Fizz shows us YA fantasy novels are basically Mary Sue books. Well, these days maybe, but not way back when I was reading them.
Yeah, I don't think anything. The Hobbit is a young adult book, right? Now, I wouldn't call Bilbo a Mary Sue, but of course that was 75, 80 years ago. Can't remember how long ago it was. Society has definitely changed.
Oh yeah, and honestly, I kind of grew up in the era of choose your own adventure books, and I was actually saving this for another video I was going to do here pretty shortly, but my first real role-playing experience, in my opinion, was picking up a one of those Dungeons and Dragons choose your own adventure books written by Rose Estes way back in the day. It was Return to Brookmere was the very first one I ever got. But the fact that you were playing a specific character and you were making your own choices and stuff like that, in my mind, still constitutes role playing to a lesser degree. I mean, yeah, sure, you're not getting fully immersed like you would in an actual game, but
I agree. My personal DMing style is, some people might call it railroading, but I kind of lean towards like a choose your own adventure. Sure, there's going to be an overarching objective and saga for the players to eventually complete, but I kind of navigate players down the road of like, okay, you have this option, A, B, or C. So I usually don't lean towards like a sandbox. I try to present like options, but definitely it's not an open world thing for me when I DM. But Snorda over here asked, are there any bear races? Asking for a friend. So yes. So the Wilderkind, who are the kind of anthropomorphic animals, and I wanted to step back a second and say, well, we wanted to kind of have like a Redwall atmosphere with them. So, but see, in Redwall, there are no humans at all, right? They have mice and otters and lizards and different characters and rats, but there's absolutely no humans. So our thought was, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could play as like a Redwall character, but interact with humans and like other people, like a normal, like an actual in the world. So that's where we came up with the idea of the Wilderkind. But yes, there are bears, wolves, there's actually a chart you can choose, and they are kind of separated by how strong they are and what abilities they have. So definitely.
Yeah, in fact, we can go over them real quick for the audience. We have Bjornveer, which are bear folk, which I guess Snorty would be one of those.
Yeah.
We have Draconveer, which are the dragonkin. I guess they're probably a little bit similar to the Dragonborn from regular 5e, or are they pretty different?
Yeah. So we're like, well, what sucks about Dragonborn in 5e? I look online and I see hundreds of complaints. They don't actually seem like dragons. Their breath weapon is weak. It doesn't scale with, it doesn't work after a certain level and nobody wants to use it. So we're like, you know what? Let's make our dragon folk like Draconians from Dragonlance. And so that's what we did. And we made them super duper strong. Like their breath weapon is way better. They have dragon-like scales and claws and resistances and a lot of powers, which makes them strong. So yeah, they're like Dragonborn the way that I feel like they should have been, and with tails and wings, of course. But yeah, they're technically part of the Wilderkind.
I think that is awesome.
Linguistically, like what you're saying there, like Bjornveer, bear folk, Bjorn being the word for bear, and like I guess Scandinavian languages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we decided to create these names linguistically. Veer is the suffix that's kind of like the idea of werewolf. You know how were means man, so it's like a wolf man. So Bjornveer would be a bear man. Drakenveer would be like a dragon man. So that was our kind of linguistic idea behind that.
You said dragon man.
Yeah.
Trogdor flashing in my brain.
Deburnator. Then he was a dragon.
We got Ecornveer, squirrel folk. I'm sure those will actually be popular. Grevenveer, which are badgerkin.
Yeah.
Cananveer, which are rabbit folk. And I imagine yours are probably a little better than the rabbit folk they put out in 5e just recently.
Well, a lot of these are not fully fleshed out. We actually kind of separate, because there's so many of them, we break it down into basically two categories. We have the stalwart wilderkin, which are the big, beefy ones like bears and wolves. We have the fleet-footed wilderkin, which are the lightweight, agile, and fast, like foxes, rabbits, rats, that type of thing. So we have kind of two categories. Just to keep it simplified, we didn't want to have like a third of the book be devoted to animal races. That would double my furry follower count on Twitter. But yeah, in the future, I think we probably are going to release an expansion or some kind of expansion content where we flesh out each individual one and talk about it. I think that might be cool.
Yeah, that'll sell because you'll definitely get people who are interested there.
Yeah,
we got Clovier, Wildcat Folk. I guess those are a bit like Tabaxi. Mustvir, Weaselkin, or Otters. Otters are adorable. So are actually ferrets and weasels, which I guess those would be in the same category. Ravier, which are fox folk. Radivir, which I think are your favorites, the rat folk.
They are, just because I'm such a huge Secret of Nim fan. It was like one of the earliest movies I saw when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, it really struck a chord with me. So we made a whole expansion that was Secret of Nim. Like we have a whole book about the rat folk. And there's no other 5th edition book out there at all dedicated to rat folk. If you want to look for it, it's called Shadows of Padfoot Alley. It's part of the Aeres universe, and you're not going to be disappointed in it, I guarantee. If you like rat folk, that is. No humans involved.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cute myself. I mean, I like it. I liked rat folk from Pathfinder 1st edition. So seeing them back is nice. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Let's see. We got Ravenveer, which are raven folk, or Ravenveer, and then an Ulveer, which are wolfkin. I imagine people will like that.
Yeah, there's a couple of there's a wolfkin or Ulveer NPC as well. We have a whole NPC section where we break down different heroes that you can meet in the realm, and one of them is a wolfkin.
Oh, nice. Yes, Snortapoopa Squeaka could be one of the rat folk. Yeah, she'd be a mouse folk, I think, because she's Squeak a mouse. And I posted up in the link in the chat there. These are the links to your Drivethru RPG, so people who are interested can check it out for themselves, and your physical website, so they can pick up a hardcover edition. Which, if you're like me, you got to have the physical book around.
Oh yeah. The hardcover edition does come with an errata sheet. I was talking to Historian earlier about that. We've updated a lot of our rules. We're kind of pressed for time in our Kickstarter, so unfortunately the book is complete. It's definitely complete. The core of the setting is there, but it's been almost over a year since it came out. So of course a few things are going to get tweaked.
Were these done by your Russian artist?
Which one?
These illustrations here.
The rat folk on the page left there that you're looking at?
This is a Ravenveer.
Oh yeah, no, those were done by a guy. Yeah, I think there's a disconnect between the YouTube stream and the actual stream. I think that's that lag you were talking about earlier. So there's kind of a delay there.
If you're viewing this through StreamYard, it's.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a very underrated artist. His name is Matthew Sargent, and he did the art for he did all of our races pretty much. And he has a kind of almost a comic booky or coloring book style to him. But Franklin Mills, my partner there, he did all the coloring. So we got Matthew to do the line work. Frank did all the coloring for these. There's our Drakenveer there, kind of a heroic, chivalrous type of dragon knight, character race.
Oh, but yeah.
We don't say, okay, So Drakenveer can only be paladins. We don't do that. We don't have strict class restrictions for our races, but we do offer very compelling lore-based reasons for why a specific race might be a specific class. It's like Drakenveer are almost always going to be paladins or fighters or martial warriors who wade into battle with armor and swords and pikes and lances. But they don't necessarily have to be. You can create any character you want in Aeres. Technically, it's your game. But
And you got these tainted.
The Tainted Dragonveer. They're a bit Skeksis like almost from Dark Crystal. If we ever had an evil race, they would be the closest. They've been corrupted by a dark force, and so if you play as them, you're constantly tormented by whispering voices from the past of these creatures that created you.
Nasty. And okay, well, I mean, this is a good time to look at the classes since we're looking at class alterations. There's no monks.
No monks.
Oh,
monks have monks. I feel have kind of an Asian slant, and we don't. There's really not any culture that compares to that in Aeres, unfortunately. So we decided it didn't make any sense.
Right.
But in the future, perhaps we could reintroduce that.
I could always think of something. Rangers are there, sorcerers are there, but warlock is not, and I imagine that's because the connotation is that they're kind of nasty by comparison.
Oh no, warlock is there.
Oh, is it?
These are just our alterations. So in this section, we go over each class and what lore-based considerations you might need to kind of keep in your mind when you create your character. So warlocks, normally they have like a patron that you are devoted to, and the patrons for the warlock and the core material, obviously they don't exist in Aeres, so you have to find a way to get around that. So I offer a few suggestions for actual characters in Aeres as a setting that could be a good substitute, and that's what we're doing there with that section.
Mm-hmm. And here's one of your new classes right now, the Witch.
Yep, the Witch, absolutely.
Now, I've played a Witch in Pathfinder, but this is quite a bit different.
Oh yeah, we base it not just on pop culture, but also heavily influenced by real mythology from the Middle Ages. Like the Law of Three, which is kind of a weird esoteric rule that influences old world witchcraft. So they only have 3 spell slots, and a lot of their abilities and powers are divisible by 3 or important according to the number 3. That's kind of like we have a lot of mythological touches throughout the entire book and influences from folklore in addition to, 80s movies and stuff like that. But the thing that's cool about our witches is that they can cast hexes or curses. And we have a complete list of those. Like we made these all by scratch. All of their hexes and curses have unique abilities, and you add them to your spell book just like you would normal spell slots. And they're pretty cool. They're all very thematic to like witch mythology. Those are some of them there. Yep.
Judgment of the Fields.
Yeah.
That's a scary one.
The Withering Plague, stuff like that. There are 2 types of witches, which I guess you consider subclasses. But there's the Malefici, which are focused on the left-hand path, which is not evil, but more of a self-centered magic where you are defending yourself or attacking using offensive type of curses and spells. And there's also the Fiesa, which is the more other-centered or the right-hand path, and it's more about buffs and healing and how to support your team members, although they do have a lot of combat abilities as well.
That is really cool. Yeah, I like that new class a lot.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. And then you have the Alchemist, which I also hadn't seen since Pathfinder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So every everything that I've seen, I could be wrong. I haven't seen every type of alchemist for 5th edition. Obviously, there's people have made them in the past. But usually they're going to be something to do with potions, because that's what you think of, right? But our alchemist is, first of all, it's based on historical hermetical alchemy, where you're dealing with transmuting elements like sulfur, mercury, and salt. But also we're kind of a little bit influenced by Full Metal Alchemist, the anime, I have to admit there. So,
Nice.
yeah. So you can actually, they're melee combatants. They don't really have much to do with potions at all. They can transmute, let's say, their sword and change the metal into like flaming, like molten metal. And so when they attack, they would deal fire damage, for example. So they have a long list of different transmutations that they can apply to inanimate objects.
Yeah, I think they've got D8 hit points too, so they're not exactly pushovers.
Oh no, yeah. But they only stick to one-handed weapons and light armor. That's kind of to limit the level of their power.
Oh, just the same, it's still pretty cool. I mean, have a little bit of magic along with a regular fighting character.
Exactly.
And they do have some potion making.
Yeah, they can make potions as kind of a side effect of studying alchemy, because that was part of it. Of course, you're trying to transmute things into gold, so that led to a lot of what we understand in science today. And so there is a minor potion making component to that.
Oh, what's this? The Dream Caller, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's our 3rd class. That's inspired mostly by Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Morpheus.
Yeah.
But also ideas of theosophy and thought forms, which are bringing the ephemeral to life. So the Dream Caller reaches into the realm, this kind of a spirit realm where dreams and nightmares live. And so they can actually summon apparitions of dreams and nightmares into the real world. So there's a kind of I guess there's a similarity to like Final Fantasy summoners.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So their main ability, they can cast a few normal spells, but their main ability is to summon espers, which are creatures that are based on dreams, that have special abilities. They stick around on the battlefield for a short time. You can control them like pets, and then they have their own effects that they can enact on targets of your choosing.
I like that. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I mean by I think a lot of this will really appeal to some of the younger folks and stuff like that, because you have elements of obviously Tolkien, you have elements of the high magic, happier times type setting, but also there's an anime appeal or undertone to a lot of this.
So if you look at like the espers there for the Dreamcaller, a lot of them are based on common aspects of dreams, or like common dreams that people have. Like in your dreams, you might be running in place, like you're stuck. An esper could represent that. Or you see there the lady in white, you might see an apparition of like a beautiful woman who seems like ephemeral. These are all kind of like archetypes from real dreams and real pieces of mythology that we put in here.
And Kringay says, basing something on my 2nd favorite comic, you've almost sold me on this book. Oh, what do we got to do to sell you on it, Kringay? You let me know.
The digital version is probably underpriced for the amount that you get from it. I mean, this is a 360-page book. I've got it on Drivethru RPG for $10 right now. You're not going to find any other 5th edition setting with that much value. I guarantee.
Yeah, really. I like these backgrounds that you have too, because they're very different from the usual. They're very setting specific, which is what I like.
Yep, absolutely. We have a whole chapter on different backgrounds that you can add. All the different backgrounds you can choose, they're not generic. So you're not going to be choosing like, okay, I'm an acolyte, or I'm a hermit. Like the core material has those, and those are cool. But ours are very specific to the history and the lore of Aeres. So, choosing that has a big impact on what's happened to your character in their life and like how they interact with the other people in the world.
Kringacing is not being 5e. Come on, dude. It's not, from what I've seen, it's not too difficult to translate a lot of this stuff over to OSR, because OSR kind of, fits into everything. Obviously, you wouldn't get all the little action-related things that 5e gets, like, their little short actions and all that stuff, but I think you could make it work.
I'm sure you could. Maybe in the future, once we're done with our next couple of projects that we've got in the works, we can take a look at maybe a first edition translation or bring it into the OSR somehow.
Hey, I would totally love that. Anything I can do to help you do that, you want to get in touch with somebody, just let me know. I'm happy to jump on that train. I think a lot of people would be.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. My only reservation about it, the only reason why I haven't like jumped immediately on board with that is like I kind of feel that's preaching to the choir, because Aeres is an old school setting with a lot of traditionalist stuff in it, and that's what the OSR is. So it's like, well, what's kind of the point? Like I like the idea of bringing the old school to people who might not be familiar with it, or whose only exposure to 5th edition is like Strixhaven or something, so maybe I can open some eyes and get people to understand that there's like a different, more heroic type of fantasy, and about, oh wow, I can't believe this. Why didn't I know about this?
Gringa, you don't do OSR either? I don't know. What do you do then? I've forgotten. Hey, awesome one. Puts t-shirts on fire dwarves. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, Bruno says Castles and Crusades. Bruno loves Castles and Crusades. And they have pretty, chill guidelines for writing their stuff. So I don't know. I can always put you in touch with Stephen Chenault if you want.
I know about Castles and Crusades. I can't remember if I read it though. I've definitely seen it around.
Good stuff. I'm running a Castles and Crusades campaign myself on Thursdays, but we've only run one of them so far, so I can't definitively say, oh yeah, this is the best system ever or anything like that. Somebody asked me earlier today, they were like, well, which do you like better, Pathfinder First Edition or Castles and Crusades? And I said, well, it's kind of unfair to ask me because I've been playing some version of First Edition Pathfinder since 2000, because we started off with 3.0 and then we moved to 3.5 when it came out, and then we moved to Pathfinder. And the main differences being, of course, Pathfinder smoothed a lot of things over, and they did the smartest thing they ever could have done by adding in archetypes instead of favoring prestige classes.
Yeah.
But I honestly haven't played it as long as Castles and Crusades. I haven't played it as long as Pathfinder First Edition. But one of the things that drew me to Castles and Crusades was the fact that one of the problems with 3.0, 3.5, and Pathfinder is that the rule system is so crunchy that I feel it actually inhibits player creativity, because it becomes a case of, well, okay, I want to run at this wall and, leap off of it and smack this dude in the back of the head and then, snatch, this goblet from a table and drink it or something. Something kind of heroic, high fashion, high fantasy and crazy. Well, unfortunately, then that becomes like a rules mechanic breakdown. Okay, well, let's see. First of all, you don't have enough movement to complete that. Plus, you have to make a tumble check midway. Then you have to make an attack, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do that, And then I'm just like, I don't want to hear I can't do this. I want to hear, give me a roll. We'll see if it works. And Castles and Crusades lets me do that.
Yeah.
But it's too early to say that I love it more than Pathfinder, but I do like it so far. I am playing it with a newer player and a couple of old grognards who are even older than I am. Their opinion of it is pretty much like, oh, it's just first edition D&D again. But I'm trying to kind of wean them out of that, make them see where it's slightly better. But anyway, this is not about that. This is about you guys.
Yep.
I get on a rant, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, so we're looking at key figures and things.
Indeed, yep. We've got, so at the beginning of the book, there's a pretty large history chapter. I basically mentioned that we kind of have a summary at the beginning of the whole history. So it's only a few pages. Plus we have a timeline that you can look at. So that gets you caught up pretty quick on what's happening. But we have a huge, like 30, 40 page, like complete history up to now. So this is our allies and enemies, our NPCs and our monsters that we've added. And they're all mentioned in the history. Like all of these characters are important figures. You can add them to your adventures, to your campaigns. You can put them in parties to assist the players or not. Major villains are here that have influenced the procession of the entire history of the world, like Lancethier, who was a major hero who turned into a tyrant king, was eventually dethroned, and he created an entire following of people who believe in his twisted ideals. So there's a lot there that you can build on to add to a campaign or an adventure that seems thematic.
Yeah, that was an interesting character. The first time I saw him, I'm like, who is this guy? He's so cool looking, for one thing. Because that's beautiful artwork. I mean, guys, you can't see it as well because of the glare and everything like that in my poor camera, but seriously, this is I like it because this has a sense of story to it, which is something that I don't see in Wizards of the Coast products. You know, you can look at this character and you can see, okay, you know, even though he's wearing the armor and everything, he looks heroic, there's a darkness that's all around him.
Right, and he's wearing a steel crown like Morgoth from the Silmarillion.
Yeah, exactly. I love that stuff, man. That's great.
He was actually he was one of the party members of our high school campaign like 22 years ago. He was a main hero. And so it's like, let's take him and make him a villain and see what happens. It turned out like it worked out.
We have, Victor is showing up. Hey, Victor, it's good to see you. And this is kind of different. I mean, this is like almost looks like an old woodcut type illustration thing. What inspired this?
Yeah, so throughout the northern lands of Aeres, the Lancethier's dominion, they were basically the core of what they were about was they were anti-magic, I suppose. That's kind of a simplification, but they thought that magical creatures would bring about the doom of Aeres, and so they tried to purge them from the realm. So they would post like propaganda posters and things like that all over the place. And I was like, that's kind of like a classic medieval wood carving type of thing that you would see. Franklin Mills drew that.
I like that.
Like warning against the dangers of fraternizing with these beast folk. Like if you do that, they're gonna steal your children in the night. You know,
propaganda.
Beauty and the Beast type of stuff with Gaston, if you can recall that.
Been a while, but
witch finders. We have kind of like a allusion to the witch trials and the witch finder general, you know, from like the 16th century, 17th century.
Mm-hmm.
Those are in the setting. Major force to be reckoned with.
This character looks very inspired by historical settings, like a mix between like Scythian and Egyptian almost.
Yeah, we have. I found I think he was Czechoslovakian artist who did a few of our illustrations there, and that was one he did, and he bases a lot of his stuff on, I guess, kind of historical references from his own country. So I thought that would be cool to have an elf that kind of represented that.
I like it. I like it. I mean, I've said nothing but good stuff about all this, so I mean, honestly, I really do like it. I think it's pretty cool. I think this is a great setting. I think it's very refreshing. Oh, and there's your character here. Might as well tell us about that.
Oh yeah, that's my avatar that I use in Twitter and everywhere else. It's Theodric the Virtuous. He's the first of the Drakenveer, who are the heroic, kind of knightly dragon warriors. They live by a code of honor, an ancient code of chivalry. I call it the old code in the book, which I took from that movie Dragonheart. It's one of my favorite movies. And like,
Nice.
it's like, so it's, I guess it's just he's kind of my mascot in a way, as a representation of like my childhood love of like dragons and dragon type characters that I wanted to bring into the world.
Man, that artwork is just stunning, dude. It really is.
Yeah, that's a great artist. It's one of the all of our artists are very underrated. I found people that were almost unheard of. They had no followers, but their art I thought would be a great fit, was amazing. So, we got a good value out of these folks.
Good picking. I mean, a little bit like Sigourney here.
Yep. I added a disclaimer to the very beginning of the book just for that says any depiction of people in this book, it's like, it's the classic disclaimer. It's like
not a reflection of real people.
Totally
and
fictional.
And you got your own bestiary with some new critters, of course.
Yep, full bestiary there.
Creatures. And these ancient Aeres dragons are badass, dude. These things are like way nasty.
Yeah, they're designed to be a party killer because there's only one or two of them in the entire world and nobody's ever seen one before. So if you find one, if you delve deep enough and too greedily and too deep, you might come across one of these dragons, and if you're not a full like level 20 party, you're probably gonna die.
What this reminds me of is the great dragons from Record of Lodos War.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about there. That was another influence of mine.
Yeah, that was a great series.
Yeah, the dragons of Aeres are the size of mountains, and they can swallow like an entire castle in one gulp. They're definitely nothing to trifle with.
And okay, I gotta mention these goblins. Okay, I love these goblins. I love the way they look. They look very Berserk inspired, like the Berserk trolls. And you look at these things, and there's no way in hell you're gonna sit there and say, well, they might actually be good guys. They can't help it. They're just in by circumstances. Why don't we try to make friends with them? I'm like, there is nothing about those that looks friendly. They look like monsters.
Yeah, their alignment is chaotic evil and nothing else. But I understand, I understand that people might want to play like a cute short stack goblin. I get it. So we actually have a race called the Drauglier, which is a sub-race of our gnomes that are very goblin-like in appearance and demeanor. So you can actually play as like a goblin-like character in Aeres if you want to, but actual goblins are vicious, nasty beasts that need to be put down on first sight.
Yeah. See, I like that motif because it's like, the evil looks evil. Then you look over at the unicorn, and it's like, okay, there's no way that could be evil.
Yeah.
Just looking at it. I mean, maybe I'm just too hung up on classic depictions of fantasy and stuff like that. But I mean,
it's not even supposed to be classic. It's part of our culture as human beings, and it's important. Like, I recently saw in the news there was the banning of the comic book Mouse, right?
Yeah.
That one school district. Well, in Mouse, the Nazis are cats, and the Jews are mice, and the Americans are dogs. Like, that was a conscious decision, right? Because those animals represent specific things. All you have to do is look at them, and in the back of your mind that what they represent. Cats are vain and sometimes cruel, and they believe themselves to be superior. I mean, that's why they're the Nazis. You know, that's why I think archetype and like visual representation and things like that are important. And we've got that throughout our entire book.
Yes, definitely. I love that you have like all the little cities and districts and things like that mentioned and outlined. It's kind of,
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be like some more stuff coming out for this kind of stuff that'll break it down even more. But
Oh, sure. Yeah. We've got a quest hook for every single destination on the Aeres world map. And there's a lot, you know, it's not as enormous as something like Tal'Dorei or Wildemount. You know, those Matt Mercer puts like 120 pages in his Gazetteer, but we've got more than enough to build any kind of quest or adventure in Aeres.
Yeah, and I don't know, something about this feels more, I don't know how to put it, warm, I guess, because, you know, Tal'Dorei really feels very corporate.
I agree. Like it's kind of, if you look at a generic Tal'Dorei campaign and a generic Forgotten Realms campaign, I don't know if I would be able to tell the difference. You're going to run into stuff that has an apostrophe in its name, and it's just going to be kind of like a, you know, like a generic D&D campaign.
Yeah, whereas something from this feels very setting specific, like you could get into the characters more easily.
Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of dungeon masters out there who don't like setting specific stuff because they feel like it's a lot of work to get into. They have to devote time to it and delve into it. But the reason people, I feel, they don't like that is because those type of settings are boring. They don't draw you in. They don't have good artwork. That they feel like a chore. And so Aeres, I think, is kind of the opposite of that. Like reading it is like reading like an old fantasy novel, like from your youth. Like you're gonna get into it. And ultimately, like Forgotten Realms and Tal'Dorei and Eberron and Strixhaven and Ravenloft and all those settings are, Wizards of the Coast calls them part of the D&D multiverse, right? That's what they call them. So if you're playing a game in one of those settings, you know what to expect. You're going to run into beholders and weird interdimensional beings and pocket planes and vampires and all this gonzo stuff that
friendly mind flayers.
Yeah, you'd expect that in a D&D game. And so I guess like every single one of those things, like they're not interchangeable. It's not fair to call them interchangeable, but they have kind of a similarity to them. You know they're D&D products right away when you take a look at it. But Aeres is outside of the D&D multiverse. It doesn't feel like a D&D product. And so I think that's where it stands out.
And it's got its own artifacts, which I remember reading that. Yeah.
Yep.
I love some of the potion of rodent sensibilities.
Yeah, we got a whole ton of potions, a few different legendary things that you can encounter.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, once again, it's like even if you were just a GM and you were just farming for a good idea, this is still a good book for that.
For sure, absolutely.
But as a setting, it's still really good.
We have an entire tarot card deck.
Nice.
That we designed. It's kind of like the deck of many things almost. You can draw from it and get a special thing that happens to you.
Man, this is so Hobbit. It hurts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's straight out of the Hobbit cartoon right there. That spider in Mirkwood.
Yeah, I love that.
We've got fighting a couple of forest gnomes and kobold warriors and one of the weasel folk there. I wanted to throw in.
I love that. I mean, I know I've said this so many times, but it's a great artwork, dude. It's so great. I love it. But I really do. It's refreshing. You know, I go through the book. I'm getting lore. The stuff's not hurting my eyes. The pictures are pulling me in. It's like, this is what you want.
Yeah, and like, well, being part of like the social media over the past year has introduced me to a ton of different folk who are like kind of in the OSR
Mhm.
They're attached to like the old school way to play D&D, and they don't normally like stuff like non-human characters. Like it's like, oh, we gotta have human fighter. It's traditional to have like human elf dwarf. That's it. Maybe hobbit. And so the idea of having like kobolds and beast folk and things like that in the party seems kind of like, ugh, they get a little cringy when they see that. But I feel like that is just because of how D&D has become. Like the modern audience for D&D, they take those and use them like fursuits, like they're furries. They're just
Yes.
a cosplay that you wear on your character. And so, of course, a lot of the old school people are going to think that's lame. So, but with Aeres, it actually has a lot of meaning and representation and role playing ability. So, like, I want to reverse some of that mindset and like bring people back to their childhood, like in Ratatouille, when the one guy at the end takes a bite of the dish and he's like, and it's like brought back to his childhood, and he realizes that he's been an asshole this whole time. That's what I kind of want, the feeling that I want to have with our book.
Well, I think you succeeded really, really well. I'll show off some of the regular artwork for you if you like, because I know you definitely want me to mention this.
What do we got?
Let me see. Let me pull it up here. I'm always slow with this, so my apologies. Bam. There we go.
Ah, yes. Yep, that's what we're working on next. We chose that. We built that to look like a Savage Sword of Conan magazine cover. Full-length expansion is coming up. The Doom That Came to Astris, Sword and Sorcery, Pulp Fantasy, Fritz Lieber, Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft. It's coming back. It takes place in a continent that's far from Aeres and that's been thrust into darkness, and you're a hero from beyond time. We're going to have hex grid regions. We're going to have tons of dungeons, new races. It's going to be a blast.
And, I live about an hour away from Robert E. Howard's old house, and I visit it pretty frequently. Plus, I had a really good interview with Andre from Midnight's Edge about it, because I grew up reading Conan pretty exclusively. And, I got a preview of this book, a little tiny preview, and I can definitely say that one of the new races that comes in is pretty much Sumerian without actually being called, or I should say, let me rephrase that. Okay, Andre insists Chimerian without being a Chimerian.
Yeah, we're gonna have some stuff in there that's you don't see in 5th edition, like real time timekeeping. 1 hour in the game is 1 hour in real life. That type of stuff. We're gonna have rules that you can implement where death is permanent. There's no resurrection. It's gonna be more of a hardcore experience.
Which that will definitely appeal to most of the grognards.
Yeah.
Victor, if you want to buy this, you can either get it off of Drivethru RPG, or if you are like me and you gotta have a physical copy, this is their physical site.
Yep.
I recommend either or.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
We just actually put together a bundle on Drivethru RPG where you can get our main book and our first expansion, Shadows of Padfidali, which is our Rat Folk adventure. You can get that for a discounted price. So the bundle includes both of those and the Aeres world map. Save a little bit of money and get caught up on everything that we've done.
Very cool. I need to get that because I'm not caught up on this. Snorty Poopa says he's gonna get it. He's just debating his options. Snorty, come on, you're like me. You're an old guy. You want the hardback. You know it.
The hardback was manufactured in Europe. It was a company in Lithuania that the same company that the Alien RPG used. So,
oh, nice.
If you've got that Alien RPG, it's the quality. It's very high quality, Smith's own binding, good quality paper. So you're going to get a professional product if you order that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, Snort, yeah, leaning on physical book to save the stress on my printer and ink supply.
Yeah.
That's right.
But
Definitely.
if you do get the PDF, we do have hyperlinks for every single section in the book, so it's very easy to navigate as well.
And Frank mentions you guys will be at NugaCon on the 18th and 21st. I guess it's in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yep, NugaCon. It's second largest convention in the southeast of the U.S. It's second only to Dragon Con. So we expect to see a lot of D&D folks there. So if you're in the area and you want to come by, they don't have a mask mandate, so be aware of that. That's fine, but definitely stop by. We'd love to talk to you.
There you go, guys. Here's how you can hook up with Greg and Frank and get some Aeres products firsthand. Maybe even get them signed, which is always my favorite thing.
Frank has got his own comic book line as well. He's made a few different comic books that are pretty interesting. He's got a sci-fi and a horror line. His horror book, Morbid Musings, frequently sells out every time it's on the table. So if you're into comics and you're like kind of want to look at something different, we'll have that as well.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, I don't know if you have anything else to say about your work. I think we've covered just about everything in the book and about it.
For sure.
But if there's something I've forgotten to ask you, or maybe you want to talk about.
No, I think that just I appreciate you having me on and letting me get to talk a little bit about this because it's, to us anyway, we don't see a lot of heroic fantasy old school adventure in 5th edition, and we're hoping to be kind of a beacon in the dark in an RPG world that's kind of crumbling around us and everyone feels like so disillusioned and disheartened with the way that it's going. You can always turn to Aeres. We'll have something there for you. We'll take care of it for you.
Oh, there you go. There's a Snortopoopus for you. He's going physical.
Okay, cool. Now keep in mind, by the way, international shipping it's a bitch right now. That's going to be like, it's actually killing us. It's like $45 to ship this book anywhere in the world. So, it's out of my hands, unfortunately. It's just the COVID-19 or whatever these governments have decided to do has killed international shipping. But in the US, it's going to be pretty cheap. So should be able to get that no problem.
Yep, I got it. I was very pleased with it, and it came pretty quickly too. And I was lucky enough to get one of the miniatures with it, and I do thank you for that because I love miniatures.
Yeah, that's a custom mold. I think we're gonna order some more of those pretty soon. Have those available.
It painted up really nice. But anyway, all right. Well, everybody, we've gone a little over an hour, which usually I like to keep it at an hour, and we usually run over that anyway. But y'all take care out there, stop by Drivethru RPG, pick up one of these books, or if you can afford the physical copy, I definitely recommend the physical copy. It is as nice or better than any other WotC product you're gonna buy if you intended to buy any. And this is better. Trust me, it's way better.
I appreciate that. And look for us on Twitter. Follow us. We have a lot of news updates and posts about what we're working on. We also have a YouTube channel where I've got a lot of trailers and behind the scenes lore videos talking about the world.
Oh yeah, there. I forgot about that. Shoot me your YouTube link real quick. We'll post that up too.
Sure, absolutely. Get it for you.
Mm-hmm. We're so prepared here at Dungeons and Discussions. We're very professional. You see how we get right on top of these things, and we're just ready to go. No, I run things kind of by the seat of my pants, but that's okay. I kind of enjoy it. It's more laid back. So here you go, guys. If you want to get into some more behind the scenes Aeres stuff, that is their YouTube channel. You can check it out, and I'm sure they would enjoy the follower count.
For sure.
Like and subscribe.
Yep. All right. So maybe we can talk again sometime, not about Aeres, but I'm more than willing to jump on anytime, talk to you guys about RPGs.
Oh, definitely. definitely. We like talking about it. I will be doing some more Dungeons and Discussions. The summer months are my big months to hit a lot of the shows, but I will try to have some stuff sporadically here and there. And if the times add up, we maybe can get you on with Grim and I.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, guys, and I guess I'll chat at you later.
All right. Y'all take care out there in YouTube land. Have a great week. I am probably going to get snowed in over here, but that's okay. At least I have a nice book to keep me company as long as the power's still going. But y'all take care and have a warmer one than me.
For sure. Yep. Catch you later.
Look! The Dungeons and Dragons ride!